So my third question would be like, what do you know about how girls are treated in the justice system?
So we haven't really, well, like, I haven't really learned much about like girls and boys, specifically like different genders. We kind of have only spoken about like juveniles in prison versus like adults in prison, but yeah, I mean the only like information I would know from like girls in prisons or like incarcerated girls would be like there's like this show that I watched on Netflix. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. It's like girls that are like in a like facility. I think it's in like Indiana.
Oh yeah,
I think I know it too.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. But from that, I mean, you could tell like there wasn't like the resources that the girls needed, and there was definitely like deeper issues. Like it wasn't just like, oh, they committed like crimes, like, oh, they stole a car, or they like there was like deeper issues to it, and you would see it on this show because like, for example, the girls would be like calling home and their mom wouldn't be there, or their mom was like had like an issue with drugs, you know, was addicted to drugs, or was like also like in jail or stuff like that. So like it made like all I thought about was like, you know, these are kids, and it's not like children are like born criminals or anything like that. Like it's kind of just it has a lot more to do with the environment. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was interesting in that docu-series. It was interesting to see how the dynamics in prison, in a girl's prison, especially because there was this one guy, an officer that worked there. His name was like Gallipo or something. And and he was very popular amongst the girls there because he served like as a father figure.
Yes.
Yeah, because he was always supporting them. But not just that, but he was also educating them and like making sure they understood like what they did wrong, and like, you know, like he never really played favorites, and he was always making sure they were all okay. Like it goes to show how important it is to be dedicated to your work, especially that line of work.
Yes.
Since like you aren't just like there to like babysit them, you know, you're at the end of the day, whatever you do, whatever you say to them is gonna impact their lives. But like it was also interesting to see how little the fights were about in there.
Yes.
Like often it was just like, oh, because of gossip.
Yes.
And it was like, that's how you know like these children really wouldn't benefit from like really harsh punitive measures, because at the end of the day it's just gonna make them more angrier, you know. It doesn't really solve anything, and like at the end of the day these girls are gonna like find a way to create a problem no matter what, just because they are at that age where you know they they become a bit more delinquent. Their behavior gets worse just because they're at that age. And it's interesting also to see how in there they push the girls to finish high school, and how that was a big part for them. But it was also, what I liked was how the girls often expressed how much hope they had, like while they were in prison. Since like once you're incarcerated, I feel like a lot gets taken away from you. You know, their family gets taken away, whatever it is. But it's interesting to see that they still try to continue and have a life while in prison.
I think while I was watching that show, something that really stuck out to me was, you know, they were housed with like so many other girls, and they were like on bunk beds. And I feel like even with like adult prisons, like you always have like that fight or flight on, because and I think that might be a reason why they got into so many fights about little things. Like, for example, I remember one was like, oh, like she likes my girlfriend, or something like that. And like it was just like I feel like a lot of them also felt like they had to prove themselves in there. Like they couldn't be seen as like the weak one or like the one that people like disrespect. Yeah, like that constant like fight or flight is always like on in those type of settings, because it wasn't like a pretty, you know, like room or anything like that. Like it was very much like, it looked like, you know, like a jail, like the way they were on bunk. Yeah, it didn't look like.
And I think what also didn't really help is how close they were, you know, like compared to actual jail, like actual adult prison. They didn't really have like, you know, like roommates or anything like that.
Like
it was
personal
just all,
space.
Yeah, it was just all open, so they couldn't really, if they were just stuck in that area, they couldn't really go anywhere without having to see the other person. They had a problem with, so that stood out to me. And like the whole thing that you brought up too, like how the small the fights were, like especially about dating. It shows like, you know, these kids, like they haven't really, they don't still have a concept of what is important and what actually matters, you know. So that shows also how they shouldn't really be punished so heavily. I think what else had also stood out to me was how there was like two girls, I think, they were cousins, and they both had like drug addiction issues.
Oh yes.
And it was interesting to see, because one of them, she was always getting into problems with another girl, but it wasn't really her fault. It was just more like she was being pushed to that limit. But I just remember when she was released, she ended up relapsing back. Yeah, and that's
the younger one.
The younger one, which goes to show like, one, like drug addiction isn't a process, but also it's good that she did have her cousin with her, so when she does relapse, you know, she has somebody to lean on, and she isn't completely alone in that regards.
Like what you're saying, like that makes me like think about like the whole like making sure like children are okay even after, because I think, or not even just children, just like people who go to, you know, prison period, a lot of the times there's not really a lot of resources that, you know, make sure like that they're okay, and that they're like, whatever setting they're in or community around them is like kind of like in helping them like change, or like encouraging them, instead of just like they go back to like the same old like setting that was that caused them to commit like a crime, or like that had those like factors, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, especially a lot of these kids end up having to grow up really quickly, which often comes at the result of like missing like learning important things. Like I remember one of the girls there, she was like the eldest sister, and she had to take care of all her younger siblings, but she couldn't go back to her younger siblings because like she couldn't claim custody of them. She was underage. And that is also interesting to take note, especially like when girls come out, right, and let's say they have health issues or whatever, you know, they may not want to talk to another guy about it, you know, they might want to rely on someone in the community, but then if the community isn't good, then like you said, they have no one to rely on, and then they just go back to the same thing, committing crimes again and again, because that's all they really know, and that's how they can survive, really.